to the brand new storm. Forecast dark, now the norm. Long haul of the damned, we fight like my Uncle Sam. On the news every night, headlight blast, firefight. All I do is watch the tube, these stories or the COVID news. Truth blurs, which to choose, unending prison solitude. At least we got these man-made lights. Switch to black, lose my sight. Can we handle planned attack? Animal, mankind, trapped, now awake. If I can, count sheep, aftermath. Add infected, then subtract the poor without a mask. Did you get yawn before all this? Brand new storm, pandemic trip. Quiet down, they will pass. Waves break, waves crash. Sand castle, middle class. Dissolve us all without a mask. Alright, it's all good, baby. Hold on tight and wait for safety. Alice at her looking glass. She can't relax as we go crazy. As we go crazy. Alright, it's all good, baby. Hold on tight and wait for safety. Alice at her looking glass. She can't relax as we go crazy. As we go crazy. As we go crazy.
Welcome to the Truth to Power podcast. I am Kyrios G. On the Truth to Power podcast, we frame spiritual, political, and social topics through the lens of art. And today we have a special episode. Not only are we on video for the first time, but we actually have a guest. Our guest tonight is EL'ona Kearny. She is running for governor in this next calendar year. How you doing, EL'ona?
I am doing awesome, and thank you for having me.
I'd like you to introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Sure. My name is EL'ona Kearny. I'm running for governor here in Washington State in 2024. My campaign slogan is removing labels, and my core values are unity, community, and support, because I believe in supporting the communities where they are, because that will rebuild our foundation.
Sounds great. Now, Brett here is my co-host. This is Dirty B.
Also known as Brett, if you want to keep it simple.
But this is the first time Brett has had a chance to meet you, so maybe you could ask her some questions about her campaign.
Way to put me on the spot. I appreciate
This
that.
is the spot.
Well, instead of just filibustering and trying to take up time, because God knows I can do that well, how about you, if you could, elaborate a little bit on what your actual campaign foundation is.
My campaign foundation. So, in our communities, politics has been so divisive. And as you could probably tell, I'm not a career politician. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I have not held a political seat in any branch, but I have always harassed them, I guess you say. Like, I go to city council meetings. I've been to county council meetings to express things going on in the community. And it was never really about expressing things that I felt that I wanted to see, but it would be sitting within those meetings and hearing, like, I heard the senior community expressing something, and it seemed like they were being just gaslighted by the city council at that time. So then I got up and I spoke on their behalf. I said, okay, look, I just heard them say this, and you turned around and totally railroaded them out of what they were asking for. And, so those type of things. So I have more of an advocacy voice. And so when I say unity, community support, I believe that stop making everything so divisive. Stop making it, if we give this community something, it's going to take away from that community. So now we're going to fight each other over crumbs. That's like if we were all in this room, locked up in this room and being held hostage and captive. Somebody came and threw out this little tiny piece of bread. We're all going to fight each other for it. And that's what I feel like government does to us right now. So bring more unity by focusing on issues that we all have in common and fixing those. Support the community. So in each community we have skills. I know when I was a single mom and I was trying to get a job, I could have a 7-Eleven right beside my house that was hiring, and I would have to drive probably about an hour just to go to the other 7-Eleven because they said, oh, that's where you have to go work at. But there's this one right here by my house, and I could be here to pick up my kids. So why are you taking the skills outside of the community? Because people would be at that one saying, I would rather go work at that one because I have my home over there. Why doesn't make any sense to me. So support the community. Start working within the communities. A lot of communities say the funding is not reaching the people, but we're judging people and saying, y'all get all of this. But they're like, where? We're not getting nothing. So
I think you got a hard road if you're going to want to make sense of things in the world of politics.
yeah.
On this episode, we're actually framing the art of the topic through a song called Glitch, which on that song, I actually wanted to give an impression of what the Matrix is, but I wanted to relate the Matrix to our society.
Yes.
So there was something built in the late 1700s, 1791. It was called a panopticon. A panopticon is a building that was meant to house prisoners. But at the center of the panopticon is a guard tower where the guard could actually look down into each cell block in every direction. But the prisoners never knew when they were being watched or observed. And the idea was that they would actually begin to change their behavior and kind of self-govern themselves, to where if they didn't know they were watched, they would all be on their best behavior all the time. And the reason why I wanted to frame things through that with the idea of the Matrix is because I think with technology today and our cell phones, there's a sense that we're all being watched, we're all being listened to. And it kind of reminds me of the 1984 novel by George Orwell. So have you ever heard of a panopticon is my first question.
No, that was my first time hearing of that.
What do you think about the concept?
I think about the concept is unconstitutional, first off.
I'm glad you said that.
That, we have a right to our privacy and a right to what we do, and it's our responsibility to govern ourselves. But pretty much you have, I know people always say, oh, conspiracy theories, people are conspiracy theorists, but they say it in a negative way. But what people don't realize is that, let's say it's government. If you're coming up with strategies, you're coming up with different strategies. Those are the conspiracy theories. Government is coming up with those strategies that everybody's thinking of, but which one are they choosing to go with? And it might be one of your choices. I worked in military intelligence, so for a time period, and then I requested to be removed out of top secret because I felt like some of it went against my moral beliefs.
Patriot Act.
So
What was that over there, mister?
I'm just clearing my throat. Don't worry about me.
I think you should clear it all the way out. What do you got on this topic?
Oh, well, when it comes to the right to privacy, I mean, you can say we've been losing that for heck ever since we were founded as a republic. But when it really took off, at least in my life, had to have been after the 9/11 attacks, and the Patriot Act was put forth, because that was no reason to go into a diatribe about it, but when the focus was on take your safe subjugation and get rid of your dangerous freedom, everybody went along with it because we had a mutual enemy, a mutual threat. And it's one of those things that I've said before on this podcast is if you ever really want to know when the really bad bills are going to get pushed through, check the night of any big issue, something horrible like a school shooting, an earthquake. Check the bills that get passed that night. That's not a conspiracy theory. But now we got that fight over net neutrality that happened a couple years ago. We didn't win that. And I've heard some talk about some new things about all of the internet service providers going under an umbrella corporation. I have not done enough research to know whether this is true, this is false, or, a conspiracy theory. But we know where it started. It's proven where where it's going, and this conclusion is downright frightening for me, at least. But yeah, military intelligence.
Yeah.
That's an oxymoron.
That's what they
And that's probably all we're going to talk about on that subject. So,
Well, one of the issues is that when you feel like you're being watched all the time, just like those prisoners, right? They begin to self-regulate behavior. And I think that, especially in our time of social media, people have self-regulated a lot of behavior. And with the cancel culture, I think we're trying to regulate the behavior of others, at least online. And one of the things that happens with the panopticon is not only do we become self-regulating, but we can become very passive and we become conformists, right? So my views on politics, I had been for a long time a Democrat because union working guy, right? Like I've just supported Democrats through the years. During the course of 2020 and coronavirus, I saw everything as a divisive show. And this is what everything has seemed to me. I really don't lean either way anymore, and I'm just looking for common sense, to be honest with you. But the passivity of our times, I think people, a lot of times they fall into a tribe because we get these oversimplified answers to complicated questions.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things we talked about on the phone today was abortion. I don't want to talk about abortion at all. And the reason why I don't want to talk about abortion is because it's a divisive topic that's meant to keep people arguing.
Yeah.
And I think what I said to you is one thing I hear almost nothing about in the world of politics is a discussion about labor. There is nothing that we all spend more time doing than showing up for a job. You know, and the amount of time that people work today doesn't really leave a lot of time to be involved with politics. And I think this panopticon that they've created, at least through the media, it keeps us more along the lines of passive observers and not actually being able to interact with policies getting changed.
Yeah. I agree because and it's like we said, those topics of abortion and all the other divisive ones that have come up in campaign, those things first off are pretty much set. Nobody's arguing. Why are we arguing something that is not going to change? We want to talk about discuss things that are concerning everybody equally on a scale. Taxes are affecting us all. Are we able to afford the bills? Because prices are going up. Rent is going up, but our pay raise is not matching to be able to take care. People want to talk about those things, but yet I see politics, the talking points when you watch news. Oh, the poll says that everybody wants to know about climate change and transportations. Those are top. Yeah, we do want to know about those things, but those are not the top. Because at the end of the day, if I can't feed my kids, if I can't pay for a roof over my head, what difference does everything else, transportation, make to my situation? And then you have like some sides say, oh, taxes don't affect me. Well, fine. Think about your fellow Washingtonians, because if taxes don't affect you personally, eventually it's going to spill over to you, because if the rest of us who are hard working class end up homeless, then guess what? A lot of us is going to say, bump, why go to work?
And
let the people with the money do it.
And the only ones that would ever say the taxes don't affect me are either the rich or the poor. Once again, it is the topic of the middle class, and its decline is a marginalized topic in this world. And that is absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
You know, I think it's crazy to actually think along the lines that taxes don't affect all of us. I am a big fan of the saying taxation without representation. That was something that was discussed a long time ago. And if you want to talk about taxation without representation, on the last episode of our podcast, we took on veteran suicide. And we pointed out that 4 times the deaths occur by suicide compared to those that die in combat. And that doesn't matter if you are in combat or not. 50% of veteran suicides actually take place when they've never seen combat. So the numbers are staggering, and this is one of the things that our tax dollars should be taking care of is veterans,
Yes.
right? So in the song that I did, Bullet, I pointed out that there's 45,000 charities that raise money for the veterans. And the question I asked, isn't that's what our tax dollars do, right? Didn't we raise money through our taxes? Now the idea that, taxes don't affect me, well, they affect America. Right?
Yeah.
If we're not meeting the needs of our veterans, if we are failing as a country, we say support our troops, that's the language we like to use. Well, our taxes should be supporting our veterans. And 4 times the deaths of veterans compared to the ones that die in combat, to me, is an unacceptable number.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. We have Gold Star families that I found out about during my campaign. And what Gold Star families are, if a veteran commits suicide, their families aren't taken care of. So, it's different if they died in combat or they got out and served their time, all those type of things. But if they commit suicide, there's different treatment and they're scrambling. So they have a group that they've been trying to, a bill that they've been trying to get passed for that recognition and to get funding for those families. And I agree, because just because that person committed suicide, they're still our family. They're still part of the military, just like we treat everybody else. And it's heartbreaking, even for, someone that's older than myself who served wars, like hardcore wars, that can't even get a percentage rating, and they're struggling to pay. My granddad was one. He was coming out of his pocket for medicines. One time I was trying to help, and I was like, oh my gosh, how are you paying bills? I've never seen nobody paying $800 in medicine. That's about almost as much as your car payment, those type things. And is disappointing and disheartening, because they saw some harsh things and went through some harsh things, and to not feel that they deserve something or some type of help. Oh, we're going to throw you at the VA system. You get free medical. As a veteran, I can tell you how hard it is to get in and get the services that you need, to the point that sometimes I've actually not so much as given up, but I know that somebody else who really needs it worse than me, I'd rather help push them through and just go on a waiting list and wait my turn. So, yes.
And that kind of brings me to the topic. I know you touched on the fact that you've done advocacy in the past and went and talked to the powers that be in this state, or even higher at times. I myself was part of a pretty large grassroots advocacy group, I'll stay nondescript, that we worked and fought to save our industry for multiple years, did so much research, spent so much money, brought it all to the governor's table. And when he went to sign the bill that was to pass, that put, I don't want to over-exaggerate the number, at least 50 of my fellow business owners out of commission and hundreds of my friends out of work, the last thing he said to the lady that really that really ruined her life, the last thing that he said to one of my good friends when she asked, how many good hardworking Americans you're putting out of business with this law, the last thing he said, and it's on tape, is, "So sue me," and signed it. And if you get curious about it, anybody out there can look up the Master Settlers Agreement online. Wow. It'll all come out in the wash there.
That sounds a little complicated to me.
I'm staying nondescript. It's not about me on this one. But I'll take that all around and say, so with advocacy, have you, if you don't mind sharing, as nondescript or as descript as you want, I'm just curious about how much positive impact you actually were able to have with any of your advocacy, because with mine it was hundreds of people putting tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars together to get absolutely zero results because the vote was already cast, because the money was already in the pockets.
So I spoke on 4 different bills. 2 of them didn't pass, but they were about gun awareness. They were the ones about the gun ban on the magazines, and I was against the ban because it really was not what it said it was. But we already know what the results of that is. That ended up going through. And so it was 2 with the guns, and the other 2 that I spoke on did pass. One was for Renton Tech College for them to get more funding because they wanted to add on to their building. So I went with my college president, and I was the student spokesperson. And the other one was earlier this year for House Bill 5000 for Chinese American History Month. I spoke in what is this word? Solidarity?
I don't know what the hell that means.
I
in
spoke,
America?
Yeah,
Solidarity.
I spoke in support. I always hear that solidarity where I say, is that the right word to use? But I spoke in support of their community having a history month, and it passed this year.
Awesome.
And another one that has not even been able to make it to the floor that we're trying to get people is, I forgot the specific name, but the group is called Equality for Boys and Men. And I know I get a lot of flack and pushback, so for those of you who are going to want to attack me on this because you feel that women and moms are the ones that I should be taking up for, I believe that it's not about gender and it's not about race. It's more about how can we work together, because mental health is an issue for all of us. So if you say that men are the cause of women being abused, then why not get mental health help for men who are being abusive because they have a history of something that they're hurting from, to help them get better? Don't take away programs from them. When it comes to children, I'm not going to say, oh yes, moms should be the ones with kids. I'm going to say whoever is the better parent. It's not about a choice of taking a side of a mom or dad, because where I come from in Florida, in Tampa, you see Tampa, pull up Tampa News, you always see moms prostituting their 2 and 3 years old, getting caught on TV. So why would I say moms is the only best choice for a child? So,
to bring it back to the idea of the panopticon,
yeah.
I think that it is not just our technology where we feel like we're being observed. I think in the workplace, a lot of times we feel like we're being observed. A lot of times there's people that are actually hired to watch everybody there, right?
Yes.
But you go back into the school thing. You talk about solidarity and getting people to come together on issues and things like that. I think as far as schools go, right? I think in a way that's another panopticon, right? The behavior.
Their bottle sucks because them kids
well,
will bully each other.
The behavior that kind of gets self-regulated, right? We don't really have the freedom to question the information, right? In school, the teacher gives the information, the students take the information, and to get the right answers on the test, you have to repeat the information. It's not a conversation between the class where we get to approach a bunch of different ideas. And I actually think that one of the things that we don't do in school is actually have a lot of work towards communication, right?
Yes.
Communication is huge. And if you want to talk about people being able to come together on these different issues of either guns or abortion or even in politics, you have to master the art of communication. Yes. Not be able to just put together some information. But somebody wise once said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we should listen twice as much as we speak. But the art of listening is somewhat lost in this age of social media.
Yes.
Right? So getting back to the idea of the panopticon, right, where we feel like we're being watched all the time, things like that. Social media is a way that at least teenage kids, right, want to put out a perception of themselves. Adults want to put out a perception of themselves. And a lot of times we don't think that other people feel the way that we feel or think the things that we think because we've stopped communicating with each other. And in a lot of ways, the technology keeps us isolated. It keeps us passive. It keeps us conforming. And with the education system that we got, we're not having a communication with the information, right? We become passive observers. If you are just supposed to regurgitate the information that the teacher tells you, it's not a conversation. That's not what these kids are having, right? And the individuality somewhat has been lost. So that by the time that you become an adult, right, a lot of times we just get into our own tribe, you know, and then all of a sudden the tribes seem to be battling. So solidarity it almost seems lost, even with topics like veteran suicide that seems like all Americans would support our troops. But here's my question, and this is something that Brett and I discussed on the podcast in the last couple of weeks. Speaking with vets, speaking with people that was in the military and doing some of the research, I had the idea that I think that part of the problem is when you go into the military, you are in a tribe for real. You eat together, you sleep together, you share one common goal, you share one common cause. Right. And there is a feeling, I am sure, of connectedness and brotherhood that exists when you're in the military, if you're at war or not, right? Yeah. And then you come back to our society. A disconnected society that seems to be warring among the tribes. Now, I don't know, but that would be a little traumatic for me. You know, you take maybe a soldier that isn't used to communicating about how they feel or what they think, because we never learned that in school, right? So some people never learn that skill. Now to come back to a society where you feel is disconnected and you've lost your brotherhood. Yes. That's got to be traumatic if you've been at war or not, which I think is part of the reason why suicide is so high. Not just suicide, but alcoholism, drug addiction, homelessness, all these things. We've got vets falling through the cracks every day. And I think part of it is when they're coming back to this society, we're disconnected. There's no unity with us. Yes. Do you feel any of that?
So when I got out, I didn't know that there were resources. So I got out, I was pregnant, and I didn't have a job. So it's already, that right there is already a barrier of difficulty to get a job. Then I was being told everywhere, oh, we can't hire you because you're overqualified. And I could never understand, what does that mean? Like, how can, if I'm overqualified, just pay me what you have there on the paper. I just need a job. No, we can't, because then we can get in trouble for not paying you what your value is. But we don't have that to pay you, so we can't hire you. So all of those things were frustrating. And I can't remember how I ended up coming to the VFW, find out about VFW and programs like the DAV. And I went and talked to them, and when I was talking to them, it's like, oh, so you're a homeless veteran. And I was like, no, I stay from person house to house. I'm not homeless. But they said that is homeless. Yeah. And things that I didn't know, you know.
Didn't have a home of your own.
Yeah. I always just imagined homeless as staying out in a tent on the street, not, you know, a place. And so by this time I had my baby and a 1-year-old. And this guy, he was like, oh no, we have these programs. I said, I've been out all this time and nobody told me about these programs. Now, if I didn't have my kids, I probably would have been a suicidal vet. But for me, it was my fight every day to make sure these kids were okay and taking care of them. And I guess that was like my daily motivation. But if I didn't have them, I probably wouldn't have had a motivation or care in the world, because it's like, well, if I came out here, there's nothing for me in this society. I can't even get a job. So yes, I understand how they feel.
Did you ever read that book, 1984?
No, I haven't.
You read that book, haven't you?
I might have thumbed through it once or twice.
Do you feel that book relates to where we are today? Trick question.
Yeah, a little bit. kind of touching base on, I won't get into the book or anything, but the world we live in right now, through at least how I see it, is, if we're talking about divisiveness and unity, the divisiveness is rampant and the unity is superficial and fake and full of half measures. You have, if it's divisiveness, you got red versus blue. Don't even need to touch base on that. We know how divisive that is. But when it comes to things that we try to be unified over, like, let's just say, we support our troops, we stand with Ukraine, whichever one else you want to say, there's so many, but I'm like, they all sound divisive, someone will be against them. But anything that almost everybody is fully for and support, how many people do you think do more than put it on a tag on their Instagram or post that they support it on Facebook? What the hell does anybody do out there in the real world? This is a world that is locked behind a computer screen, and it is a don't be about it, talk about it society right now. And it almost feels like it's typecast to be that way, because like with the advocacy, my experience with it and the few other things that I've actually like put boots to the ground and went and become a part of and not just talked about, my whole don't talk about it, be about it mentality that I try and live by, you really get your eyes opened to the beauty of the people that are actually down there doing the work. And I'll be honest, I actually get a lot of resentment towards the ones that is nothing but lip service. The whole idea, my whole philosophy on this world is, if you can be as good of a person as you present yourself to the public when no one's watching, this world would be a lot better place. And that's one of the problems I have with, the current state of Washington. All of this money going to, housing and all of that. Sure, the mini houses, that was a great step. I may have and may do some work with those communities. But also finding out, for every one house that was built, they've had funding to build about 15. Where'd it go? Follow the money. You'll hear me say that in almost every one of our episodes. Just follow the money and find out where it dead ends.
So George Orwell, that wrote 1984, one of the things that he said is, the further that we drift away from truth in our society, the more we will hate those that speak it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And coming back to this idea of the panopticon and also the song Glitch, which talks about the Matrix, I want to talk about media as a whole. Either media for entertainment purposes, media for news purposes, or even social media. I think media's influence on society today is so incredible. Nietzsche talked about how at his time that religion was the opioid of the masses. And I've never done opioids per se. It is something I know that takes away pain and gives one pleasure, right? Yeah. And when Nietzsche said that was the function of religion for a lot of people, it takes away people's uncomfortable pain and fear of death, and it brings them a little pleasure. But it was also, in his mind, a way of detaching people from reality. And I think that media is the opioid of today as far as for the masses, right? Mm-hmm. We spend a little bit of time entertaining ourselves, watching movies, television, things like that.
Cat videos.
Cat videos?
Cat videos.
Oh, they're awesome.
I should send you my cat videos.
Let's not knock cat videos. Let's not knock cat videos.
No, I'm talking about how I spend my free time.
Well, I've seen how you spend your free time.
Not the time, not the place, baby. All right.
But getting back to the media concept, right? Media is something that we all do to relax. And this is going back to the idea of our work, right? A lot of times the jobs that we do, it doesn't fulfill us with some kind of deep meaning of life, right?
Right.
Like a lot of the jobs, like if you're the sandwich artist at Subway, you're not going home feeling like you just killed that shit, right?
I mean, if you can make a killer fucking sandwich, maybe.
Maybe if you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to test it out.
Unless you got a lot of tips.
But the idea is that we are in a state of affliction with the work that we do. There was a philosopher, Simone Weil, and she talked about how the working class is in a state of affliction because a lot of the labor that we do, it doesn't fulfill us. There was a time that people felt fulfilled, they had some kind of skill, but a lot of the things that we do don't leave us feeling really connected to the things that we're doing. So we get off, we go home, how do we relax? We watch television, we watch movies, we listen to music. We're a consumption culture.
Yes.
Right? And it's the opioid of today, right? It takes away some of the pain and uncomfortableness that we might feel going to work all day. It brings us a little pleasure, right?
Mhm.
But in the end, it's just, again, consumption, right? I can consume news, but I become a passive observer where I don't actually do anything. And that same consumption of our culture is often the thing that keeps us in the matrix, in a sense, right? It gives us this view of reality. But, you know, during the coronavirus pandemic times, right, there was so many of us that was watching a computer screen in a Zoom meeting, perhaps, and you found out the person you're in the meeting with isn't wearing pants, right?
Yes.
So what's outside of the frame, right,
Yeah.
when you're talking about media is so important. When you're setting the cameras for news, right, you can make it look like a lot of things, but what's happening outside the frame of that camera, right? And this is the panopticon that I'm really interested in. This is the reality that seems to be getting created through media.
Right.
How can people really know you
Right.
unless you're actually in the frame? And to be honest, as a grassroots candidate, people don't have the freedom to even know you, right? People's opinion of you gets censored and removed from them a lot of times because you don't have the opportunities to get in front of the camera.
Right. And I think that too, being a grassroots candidate, I actually have a better opportunity because I'm an actual grassroots candidate. I go out into the communities. The bigger candidates are on the frame, so people don't get to talk to them and feel their genuineness. They're reading a script that somebody who said, oh, this is the message you want to tell everybody. This is how you pander to this group and you pander to that group. When I'm out in front of people personally, which they're not, people like you had the opportunity to talk to me, and we've talked twice. You can sit and tell if I'm being genuine with you or if I'm over here trying to pander to you or make up something. But because we're having a genuine conversation and just talking like regular people. And that's what people get from me when I'm out doing real grassroots, because I see the bigger candidates with all the money and all the backing saying, oh, I'm a grassroots candidate. No, you just paid a whole team of college students to go knock on doors for you. And you wasn't even out there. Granted, you know, at some point I'm going to have to get other people to help knock on doors, and I'm not going to, but everybody on that team is going to be able to have the opportunity to meet me and talk with me and get to know me because they have to go and represent me. But in the meantime, I go to everybody's events. The number on there, on my card, on my website, I pick up the phone and I answer, not somebody else. For me, only way somebody else is answering the phone for me or my husband or somebody else on my team is because I'm busy talking to some other constituent, and they'll take a message. Oh, you got a barbecue? She'll be there. You know?
You're going to have to give me a call and Brett here whenever there's a barbecue coming up. That might be important information to have.
I don't try and miss a cookout.
Hey, we just got a roaster, so isn't that what it's called, a roaster? The big
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We just got a roaster. I don't know how to use it, but somebody's gonna know how to use it.
Oh, YouTube knows.
What y'all?
YouTube
Yeah, what
knows.
y'all doing for Thanksgiving? I can show you what's up.
Right?
So yeah, I have had a couple conversations with you, but since this is Brett's first time actually getting to know you,
Yes.
you know, this is a different experience than getting to know somebody through a website or a framed, like you said, a scripted talk that politicians give. I personally feel you're authentic. You know, and I told you when you were going to come on this show, we don't push agendas. We're not a gotcha podcast. We're not going to go on the attack. We want you to actually frame yourself and be exactly who you are on camera.
Yes.
This is a non-censored show. Our show, we believe in self-censorship, so we're not going to...
That's okay because I'm uncensored. So if you see some of my social media, it'll say hashtag politically correct.
Yes.
Or you get hashtag Google me because I will tell some people about themselves because I know that people feel like as a politician, you're supposed to carry yourself a certain way. You're supposed to take a lot of things and let people, you know, some insults I'll just let go by because it's irrelevant. You're trying to make yourself relevant off of me. But I've told people that, first off, people have to understand that campaigning, we don't get funds for that. We have to fundraise that. So in the meantime, that means it comes out of my pocket. I don't have bodyguards to guard me. So I can promise you, if you hit me, you're going to get hit back. Hashtag I'm politically correct.
You might have my vote just from that.
I was just about to say, like, I could make a joke, but I'll just keep it on the straight and narrow. Yeah, to be completely honest, did a very small amount of research, had a little bit of a talk, and I'm like, this will be a nice, interesting opportunity to, you know, meet one of, you know, I would literally take that guy that was screaming at traffic outside rather than who we have currently. So anything would be an upgrade in my humble, not so humble opinion. But I have to say, on completely genuine, the things that we've touched on, and yeah, just the amount of just genuine realness that I get. Like, I can tell you right now, when it's time to come to cast a ballot, I don't think anybody's beating my vote for you. So
Thank you.
It's curious.
Yeah, I know. We've had a little talks walking into this.
That was something I wanted to see what would happen here. Is I knew that he didn't know anything about you, so I was just curious how he would perceive you.
Yeah, like I say, I can be relatively abrasive with my views, opinions, and feelings. I try to stay nondescript on this show because it's about unity, not divisiveness. And the one thing I will say is my political affiliation is a lot more centered than most. I do lean one way, preferably more than the other, because of a couple of my core tenets. And to hear those touched on, some of the ones that I feel very strongly about. And I could see how you could get a lot of pushback from the parties that you may or may not be affiliated with because of some of those views. And that's something we just do not see today.
Yes.
In any levels of politics. I mean, we saw it with Big Red a couple years ago, but you know, say what you will about the gentleman. That is proof at the end of the day, if nothing else, that the way of being newly progressive is to be going against the grain and appeal to the every person, because it is proven it is just a cyclical action of 4 years we try blue. Blue did good okay with this. We really hated what they did here. Let's try red. Oh, red fixed those things little ways, but really shit the bed on those things that blue did good. Rinse, wash, repeat over and over. It's cyclical because at the end of the day, they all snicker behind our backs and count their coins together. I am very, very, very strongly opinionated on that. So I do believe you bring more than a breath of fresh air to the current political climate, especially in this fucking state.
That's why I tell people I am not a party poster child. And the reason why I say that is because there's all of these rules. You have to say this. You can't say this word. If you say this, then there's going to be cancel culture.
Should be an easier way to say that.
Yeah, I almost gag on it when I say that term as well.
I think we should cancel the cancel culture.
So it's like all of these different things. Your hair has to be this way, or people are going not to no. And this is the one that gets me. Is one group will say the white people are not going to accept you if your hair is not straight and then flat iron, and then this group over here is not going to accept you if you're not talking this way. And little does anybody know is everything that I've gone against the grain on and I went ahead and did. I went to Okanagan, and they had this big gathering, and everybody was DMing me. Oh, be careful. They are going to lynch you over there. You got to be careful. Watch your back. I went there. No problem. We all talked. We had a fine conversation. We disagreed on some things, and we agreed to disagree, and then we agreed on what things, and then there were things that I opened their minds that they had a misconception about. Was it West with Seattle area, and say, no, that's not really what they're trying to say. This is what they're really, which is really what you're trying to say over here. So we had a decent conversation. Nobody attacked me. Nobody, like there was some angry talk, but it was not attacking of me type thing. And it was like, oh yeah, whenever you want to come back over, you can stay at our house, or you can stay at our house. So it ended well, and it was like, how did you get through it? I didn't go in and prejudge them as racist. I didn't go in there with the thinking of they're going to hurt me. I went in with my own mindset to say that I'm me. I'm gonna hold my own, and like I say, somebody hit me, you're gonna get hit back.
Things like race is just like, to me, abortion and guns. It's divisive stuff, right? And I think that what you were just talking about, how people told you, you can't do this, you can't do that, that's part of that passive conformist thing that I was talking about with the panopticon, right? This is an example of how it's affected society, where people have actually warned you, oh, you've got to be a brand. You've got to be a stereotype if you're going to get in front of the camera for this. And I think this goes back to the panopticon idea. I think that people's thinking has been censored to a point of, oh, we're going to cancel you if we don't like what you're saying, right? There was a time that President Kennedy said that the U.S. library should be open to everyone, right? It should be open to all the writers with all the different opinions. The only person that the library should not be open to is the censorship board, right? We need more ideas coming from more places, and that goes back to the idea of our schools, right? We don't have the ability to communicate, right? We don't have the ability to be individual thinkers, or even let somebody be authentic, especially in politics, right? What is it with politics? Oh, 20 years ago you had this opinion. Are you going back on it now? Well, maybe. I'm an individual. I might have grown in the last 20 years. Maybe I've changed my mind.
God
right?
forbid.
On the Truth to Power podcast, we're imperfectly human. We have the right to be wrong. We have the right to change our minds and our opinions as we grow and learn from other people with different views. And I would hope that voters can resonate with that. You know? So I just want to point out one more thing on this topic of panopticon, and then we'll kind of move into something different for the end. We've all been in a panopticon, all of us, right here today, and it started when we were children. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake.
I was going to say my parents are God.
Right? You better be bad. No, good.
He knows
for goodness sake. How did it go?
Sleepy.
You know this thing.
He knows
you had
when you
Santa.
He knows when you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness
Yes,
sake.
panopticon. Regulate your behavior because they're always watching. Same thing with Jesus, right? Like Jesus was always watching, right? All seeing
everywhere.
Jesus. Yeah. So we regulate behavior. If it's under religion, if it's under Santa, if it's in the schools, if it's on our phones, right? So here's the last part of the conversation on the panopticon. There's a lot of talk today about transparency with our computers and things like that, and I think the idea goes back to terrorism, right? If you have nothing to hide, then there's nothing to hide, right? We should all be transparent. So the idea that we're going to surrender our privacy for security is a big concern moving forward into the future, right? But I don't think that a lot of the politicians are going to let us read their emails openly or give us the passwords to their account and let us see what the hell they're saying behind closed doors. Why? Because they want the privacy, right?
Weird.
But Washington actually has I can't even think of the name of it because I've been studying some of the policies, and we have I'm going to just call it an open book where you're supposed to be able to see their emails, request those, all of that thing. Problem is we don't know what to specifically ask. We don't know where to search because you got to go search for it yourself.
Mm.
And it's just like law. A lot of people don't know the law and how to speak up for themselves, and we feel taken advantage of, and we're like, the law is not worth the piece of paper that it's on. So we do have that law here in Washington State, but the problem is nobody knows it, and nobody knows how to go about the search, because you're gonna have to dig, and you're gonna get tired of digging, or you don't have time to dig.
Don't have time because everybody's working all the goddamn time.
It's just like the CIA.gov. You could go in there and find a lot of interesting things, but you better learn how to read through tens of millions of redacted files.
Right. Defining what really stuck.
Yeah.
Is society today in a state of spiritual and moral bankruptcy?
Moral bankruptcy, yes. Spiritual, it depends on what you mean about spiritual, because we have a lot of wokeism.
Woke don't mean you think. Woke don't mean you think.
So we have like
Right?
different things. We have the spiritualist group. We have the church, like all these different denominations of types of group that I think it's grown even more over the years because when I was in school, I first learned about Wiccan. I was like, well, when is that? When did that come
So
about?
let me define spirituality.
Okay.
There was a writer named William James.
Okay.
He wrote a book called Varieties of Spiritual Experience, and he looked at all the different world religions, and he said there was one thing that all the different religions had, right? Spirituality is about connection.
Okay.
And in our society, and this is one of the things I mentioned, when the troops come home, they find a disconnected society, right? We're disconnected and spiritually separated by being on our phones all the time in a lot of ways, right? 85% of the information we get on social media directly impacts me, but I'm not really opening it up to other things, right? So in a lot of ways, we're isolated, we're disconnected from the human family. Right, and this is the spirituality that I mean.
Okay.
I'm not talking about any religion or
when
the
you said that-
34,000 versions of Christianity that have been out there. Literally, 34,000 different denominations of
Because
Christianity.
I say a lot of people feel like they're spiritual, but when you define that, yes, I would say that yes, spiritually and morally bankrupt. And a lot of that is, and like one thing I feel like we should do more in school is teach youth. Okay, fine. I'm just gonna do another hashtag unpolitically correct thing.
There we go.
Is stop worrying about gender and teach youth how to love themselves. Be more about because if you're not trying to force yourself on other and someone to believe. My mom, I remember my mom said it, and even on a lot of the Medea shows, it says it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to. So if we weren't so busy, we wouldn't be fighting each other. If like, hey, if you call me the wrong thing and I didn't accept that, I'm just not going to answer. Just keep going about my business. But first, if we start to learn to love ourselves, we're not going to care about what somebody else is doing or somebody else is saying or be suicidal about it. We're going to learn to go where we're celebrated and not tolerated. And we're going to create those safe spaces for ourselves. And everybody still has a right to speak up for themselves when somebody's bullying, because my rights end where yours begin. So nobody has a right to infringe on anyone. But if we start teaching self-love, the how to mediate, how to diffuse situations, conflict resolution, those type of things, then we can start to build a community of learning how to agree to disagree, because everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to like the way I believe or my choices, and then you might even get more students to be more accepting of the gender thing, in a sense of, hey, that's their choice. Doesn't mean their choice affects me, I'm more concerned about the person and their character. Are you a good person? Are you a giving person, sharing person? Whatever of the other things that you choose, that's your choice, and I respect that. But we can't learn to respect when we're so busy at each other's throat, saying, well, you're going to do this, and now, but I get to disrespect your belief because you only have to respect mine. What did they call that? uh, your authentic self. Yeah, your authentic self should never infringe on somebody else's belief.
And that's spiritual, the authenticity.
Yeah.
So the reason why I brought that up is Carl Jung. He was the one that said that a spiritual and moral bankrupt society is open to mass psychosis. Now, mass psychosis takes two different things to happen. One, there has to be some great fear that shifts all of society's thinking. Oh, I don't know, like 2020, COVID, right? And then the second thing that happens is that we all collectively try to make sense of things. And this is where the media, the panopticon of media, kind of made sense. And people went off with their tribe, right, left, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? And I think we've been in a state of mass psychosis since then. One of the things that happens during mass psychosis is the same thing that Schrodinger talked about when training a wild animal. You isolate that wild animal and you give a repetition of information, right?
Yeah.
Our social media, our media period has kept us isolated with repetitious ideas that are keeping and cultivating this mass psychosis. And this is what scares me.
Yeah.
You know, our society every day seems to get a little bit crazier and a little bit crazier. And this is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is the purpose is that we can come together as humans being and have conversations to understand where somebody else is coming from.
Yeah.
So we've only got a couple of minutes before we close this thing out. How do you feel that this conversation went today? And just quickly, what do you think about the mass psychosis of our society?
I think this was a great conversation, and about the mass psychosis of society. Well, look at the growing numbers of suicides that we have and suicidal attempts. That right there in itself speaks for itself, that's where we're moving towards. And then the lack of mental health resources that we have, and we have people who just, what do you say, are functioning depressed on a day-to-day basis. They know how to function and go to work and do those things, but they're depressed and they're putting on a smile and a mask. So how long before they start to break and crumble? But right now they're holding it together because other people are falling apart.
Well, here's a statistic for you, and this might shock you. The suicide rate among teenage girls in high school is higher than that of the slave pre-Civil War.
Wow.
A higher rate.
Wow.
Right? So one of the things that we believe on this podcast is imperfectly human, right? We kind of accept you where you are, and this is open, honest conversations. Thank you so much for having this one with us. Thank you, Dirty B. Any closing thoughts?
You know, all I have for this, other than thank you so much for coming out and sharing your time with us, is an apology to the listener, because if I wasn't busy just absolutely fawning on her position on the state of Washington and where she's coming from, this would have been a lot more fun for you guys from me. So hopefully next time my co-host can do a little bit more research and get somebody I just can't stand on here, and I can really just unleash with both barrels. So yeah, sorry guys, maybe next time. But thank you so much for coming out. It was more than a pleasure to go through the streets of Seattle and somehow get here on time. But
This is Kyrios G, and this is the Truth to Power podcast. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much to the guests that we had today, and see you next week.
I need a new nickname.
Dirty B.
Good night, everybody.
Rhymes with Kyrios G.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about you, I guess. Save that.
Have
for
we
next
lost audio
podcast.
completely? Okay, I'll just do a closeout real
Check.
quick, and you can use that camera.